Welcome back to another episode of The Educated Homebuyer Live. This is where we're answering your mortgage and real estate questions to help you become educated homebuyers in the marketplace, whether you're buying, selling, investing in real estate. Today is July 5th. It is the day after the 4th. For many of you out there, you're probably still home recovering, but not Josh and I. We are here back to, on the grind to give you all the answers you guys need to, again, make you educated homebuyers. Josh, welcome back. I saw you yesterday, but welcome back again.
Yeah, we didn't take a vacation from going through all of the joys of housing and fireworks and all that stuff. We didn't get to see a drone show. We got fireworks, but no drone shows where we're at. So if you got to see a drone show, make some comments here because they look really cool on the internet.
They look very cool. In fact, my wife would have appreciated a drone show as about 9:15 last night. The anxiety levels were at on a scale of 10, we're at like 150. There was fireworks. It looked like we were in Kuwait, in Baghdad on our street. It was just, there was like 4 different families doing fireworks. It was nuts. I was like, can this please end so we can all go inside? But nevertheless, guys, we appreciate you being here. Welcome back once again. Might be a light day. I know there's a lot of people traveling, vacations, all of that good stuff. But what Josh and I want to do is break down what's going on in the economy, what we're likely to expect, take a look at some charts as we always do, and then we'll dive into your questions. So Josh and I were talking before coming onto the show. Tomorrow is a really big day with regards to data. We've talked about bad data is good for rates. Good data is bad for rates, right? It shows the economy is still doing well, gives the Fed more and more reason to continue to push up the Fed funds rate, which in turn, has resulted in just higher rates overall, largely due to volatility. But tomorrow we got JOLTS report, we have jobless claims, we got ISM manufacturing, we've got ADP employment, and then Friday we got the actual employment figures for last month. So there's a lot of information coming out that could impact the market. But what we want to do is, to the best of our ability, tell you what's going on now and let that, use that the best that you can to make decisions for you. Josh and I actually recorded an episode on the Educated Homebuyer podcast that'll be posted next Tuesday on YouTube, next Tuesday on Spotify and all those other platforms out there, Apple, where you listen to audio, on a forecast for 2023. We kind of give our thoughts on, what's likely to happen, where we've been so far, breaking down the numbers, really helping you understand it. But with that said, Josh, let's dive into some numbers, take a look at inventory, take a look at the market, and see what's going on. So inventory nationwide, 4,600. No, that's wrong. 400,000. Actually, that's wrong. 465,755 homes. Tell you guys, it's been a long day. The holiday.
Third time's a charm.
It just just threw me right in the mix here coming out of the holiday. So 465,000 homes last week. We were just over 460,000. So small increase week over week, not what we would typically like to see, but we're now under the levels of 2022. So we've got less inventory on the market today than we did this time last year. Orange County sitting at 2,230 homes. Last week, we were like 2,240-ish, so we're a little bit less. Huntington Beach, 175. Last week, we're at 178 at the time of the show. So inventory is pulling back just a bit. Again, this is that same chart, right? If you just took the bottom half of this chart here, that's what this is, right? Just gives you a better view. Josh kind of pointed out last week, 2023 looks a lot like 2021 with regards to how inventory started the year. If you can almost overlay those two bar graphs there, not bar graphs, 2 line graphs there, kind of have a similar pattern. So if that's true, looks like we're probably going to see a peak in inventory early September. I think it's going to happen a little bit sooner, but we will see. And that's inventory, again, historically, looking back to 2015. We look at that one every week. This shows that new listings on the market are more or less flat. That's why you're not seeing inventory come to the market. A lot of what you're seeing out there at the moment is just homes sitting on the market a little bit longer. And you're going to notice that price drops are up a little bit when we look at that here in just a minute. And that's because homes are sitting a little bit longer. Sellers are having to, get a little bit more creative, do some things in order to get buyers willing to make offers. And a lot of times that means adjusting the price. Weekly change, inventory went from 459,907 to 465. We just talked about that. Last week, this time, we went from 441 to 472, a much larger jump last year during this time, even when rates were going higher. And a lot of that was probably because rates are going higher, quite frankly. People looking to kind of get their home on the market. But the bottom was 240,000 last year, which was the lowest level that I think we've ever recorded since they started recording these numbers. So, but context, 1,183,390 homes back in 2015, which at that time, a more normal market compared to where we are today. This is another one we like to look at. Just shows you pendings versus new contracts. 385,000 pendings now versus 445,000 last year. So less demand out there in the market, as we've discussed. Price cuts gone up a little bit, right? I think the lowest we saw was 29 or so percent just a couple months back. Now we're sitting at 32% of listings have some sort of price adjustment on them. And then median home price still above where we, sell prices showing year-over-year gains now sitting at 380,000. I don't really like the way this chart comes out just because it's confusing and in the graphs and everything else. But, nevertheless, prices have more or less stabilized. This is an interesting chart is in the fact that it overlays inflation on top of the 10-year, which, we've said as inflation goes down, you in theory should start to see the 10-year come down to some extent, and we haven't seen that. But what this chart, a lot of people believe this chart to read is that, inflation coming down has probably put a ceiling in rates, but we're not likely to probably see any big change in rates until you get closer to the Fed's, target of 2%. But we will see, right? We're going to get a CPI reading. CPI, I think next week we get CPI, which should put us somewhere in the low 3% range overall. So
Jeb,
we will see.
Look at this number from this context. Why have we remained elevated while inflation has been coming down a ton? We've said before, the Fed does not control interest rates on the long end of the scale. Anything out beyond like 2 years, the Fed does not directly control, but the market is looking to the Fed, knowing what the Fed can do to either accelerate or put the brakes on the economy. So they've been looking, said, hey, you guys lost the plot. A year, the beginning of 2022, they are still stimulating while we have really high inflation. So the market says, we'll take care of this ourselves. We're going to demand higher yields by paying less and less for bonds. And what we've seen and what we've said all along is once the market is convinced that the Fed actions have got inflation under control, you will see rates come down well before the Fed does anything. So I'm not looking for Fed cuts for mortgage rates to get better. I'm looking for the market to be convinced that the Fed actions have had their desired effect. And what have we been getting, Jeb? We get sort of a head fake where it looks like inflation is under control. We're going to show some charts here in a minute that we kind of been trending sideways on that core PCE, which is the preferred gauge for the Fed. So if over the next 2-3 months, we get some good numbers that show we're trending in the right direction, we will see market interest rates improve before the Fed actually cuts.
Well, there you go. You were talking about PCE just a moment ago. Last Friday, I think it was last Friday, we got PCE numbers. Basically, came in line with expectations, sitting, I think, at 0.3%. But this, again, just shows you the breakdown of PCE over the last, couple of years since 2018?
Look at what it's doing. It shows you over that timeline, but most importantly, it's the annualized rate over 3 months is that light blue line, and the annualized rate over 6 months is the green line. They're much lower than the year over year. So when we get those figures regularly, what we're seeing is the year over year figure. So you can see more rapid movements when you go to these shorter moving averages. So this can be misleading. I don't look at this and go, hey, see, we're going to be fine. But it shows that we're trending more towards that yellow line, which is the Fed's preferred 2%. But this one here is not core. Core has been a little bit more stubborn, which we'll see here in one of these other charts. So if you look here, that blue line, that's core PCE. Is it coming down? Yeah, it's coming down. But instead of going from 7 to 4, like the headline number did, we've gone from about 5.5 down to about 4.5. So during that time, I meant to do some research. The red line says GS core inflation tracker. You'll see this data is from Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs apparently has their own inflation read. We've talked about there's limitations. It is incredibly hard to measure inflation. The Fed and the government does a very good job of it as well as it can be done. Goldman feels like they have a better measure and they show it coming down more quickly. So that will be interesting over time. But when we see rates staying inflated, it's because, yes, we are coming down, but the last few months, we've just kind of trended sideways on that core PCE, which is the Fed's preferred measure. And the next couple charts here are going to show us a few things, a few reasons why. So core services inflation softens. So we're still up here. Don't look so much at the absolute number because last month says 0.23%. That's just of core PCE. How much of that is services inflation? Look at the trend of that graph over the last year. It is definitely coming down and trending down. The services portion of PCE is what has been sticky and been holding that higher. If we see some improvement in that, some significant improvement in that, we'll see it come down much more quickly.
Now, and just a reminder, guys, these charts, if you're listening on audio, you're here on YouTube, there is a link in the description below so you can actually see the charts here. If you're on YouTube, obviously you see them, but sometimes people want to download them, do different things with them. They are available in the chat, in the description. So just go to that link and grab them. That said, Josh takes us to the next slide. Used car prices, right? Or auction prices. We've already seen those pull back. Yeah, what are your thoughts here?
You just see that little dip down. What happened here is we had a nice trend from middle of last year to the first part of this year, and then those numbers had turned back up in terms of that CPI for used vehicles, but the used car auction prices have turned down. So they lag, the CPI measurement of used car values lags the auction prices, and that little turn up at the end of last year is what we've picked up in the last few months of data. So core services and used autos have been a wild card that have held inflation higher, that if those correct, like they look like they have over the last few months, we will see better reads. This one I wanted to throw in there, Jeb, just because it's contrary. We're headed to a recession. I mean, every week we show up here and you guys say, hey, are we in a recession? Are we getting a recession? When's it coming? We show 50 different measures that traditionally have been 100% predictive of a recession. This one right here, it is the Philly Fed 50 state coincident indicator. And if you're like me, you read that, you go, what in the good Lord's name is that? They go through all 50 states. They look at non-farm payroll, average hours worked in manufacturing, the unemployment rate, and the wage and salary disbursements deflated by CPI. So basically, how much money are people making adjusted for inflation? And this has been 100% predictive of recessions going forward. And we have gone, has indicated a recession. So all of these things can't be true because I can show you 50 other measures that are 100% predictive in the past of a recession. And this one is 100% predictive and we didn't get near it. But there is data out there. When we look at this, Jeb, what has been the thing that's most stubbornly difficult and that may actually be different than where we were in the past? Always be careful when someone says this time it's different or there's a new normal. We have had structural changes in demographics. We have a lower birth rate. We have boomers aging out of the market, people retiring early, more working, participating. And because of that, we may see a new lower baseline level of unemployment and higher wage inflation, which could change things over time. So it's something worth watching.
So guys, listen, are you watching this? Are you hearing Josh? Is he just like cutting out or is it just me on my end? Internet connection got upgraded. And for whatever reason, the speed got worse here. We recorded something earlier today, Josh, which I was going to tell you, in coming on here is that you cut out several times. So you make sure you're using the audio from your side when you're doing that. So, but let me know in the comments below if you guys are, yes, that is a problem. So, Josh, you need to upgrade your computer again. I realize it's brand new, but you need to do it.
It's brand new and $1 billion. So that's awesome.
It doesn't matter. You need to do it again. Streaks of better than expected non-farm payroll. So, wow, look at this thing. This is crazy, right? Going back to 2000, you see like there's not seasonality or whatever, but ups and downs, just like back and forth. And then 14 straight increases or better than expected non-farm payrolls. Josh, what do you make of this?
It
It's
just
all
tells
lies.
you, it tells you the strength of the employment market. We talked about in the episode that we recorded today that what do we have? We have a couple of pieces here of this, that things have changed, and we may see lower unemployment rates going forward than what we've historically seen. Full employment may be at a lower level, and this tells you 14 beats in a row is wild. You can see in 23 years, the most we had seen was 5 or 6 in a row. We're at 3 times that right now.
And then here we go, looking at GDP, based on, a debt maturing and rolling over. What do you think? What are you thinking with this one?
So just look at the top line there. If
Yep.
20% of debt matures this year, and what does that mean? So the Treasury, when the government borrows, they don't just have a credit card with just this revolving debt out there that you pay off whenever you want to or pay back whenever you want to. They sell 1 month Treasuries, 3 months, 1 year, all the way out to 30 years. So some of those roll off every year and they reissue new bonds at current market rates. So if we were to see 20% of the overall debt mature this year, you would see an increase in interest costs of 1.38% of GDP. This is a problem for the government. During COVID, when rates were incredibly low, somehow our government, both parties, so if you're a hardcore Democrat and think they're great, or you're a hardcore Republican and think they're awesome, they all we now owe
Josh got to the
32
climax
trillion.
of his little thing and cut out.
We now owe $32 trillion thanks to Republicans and Democrats not thinking there are consequences to spending. And what you're looking at is a 1.38% of GDP going just towards additional interest costs this year with rates higher. It's a problem for the government. They need to move rates lower, if at all possible, under their control.
And just side note, Rihanna Keefe says they are all what, Josh? They're all idiots. That's what they all are. I will summarize. But nevertheless, I digress. Let's go to a couple more charts here, and then we'll take a look at student loans. So I know there's a comment in here about student loan debt. So basically, student loans, just the whole repayment of student loans was just shot down by the Supreme Court with regards to a veto by our president. And it looks like student loans come September will be back in repayment. And then based on this chart here, it says an increase of 45% from a decade ago on an average monthly loan payment. So it looks like on average, each student pay about $413 more per month because of student loans coming back into the mix. And, different people out there are talking about, different things, effects on consumer spending and, all of that. And I believe there's truth to that, right? I mean, people have gotten away, probably forgotten to some extent they even have student loans because they've been forgiven for the better part of 3 years. That, some people are going to be shocked when they have to start repaying them again, and that, life's not free. So, it'll be interesting, but we have another chart here to take a look at on that as well, Josh, which is, retail sales and the impact of student loans.
So that average payment, Jeb, of $400 a month, when those restart back up, let's say everyone applies for an income-based repayment and it's $200 a month. This will show you the impact on retail sales, which filters through to GDP, which filters through to inflation. It is going to have a negative impact. And if you want, Jeb, to talk about the question that was asked here, I'm going to relate this back. Let's just throw it up. So VAR Watch says, do you think student loan repayment starting in September, plus many companies mandating employees return to office 3 days a week starting from September, will affect housing? And my answer was, I've been all over the student loan stuff and income-based repayment and massive student loan debt impacting people's ability to buy since back about in 2016. And Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, they flip-flopped all over through that time. But the thing that has been consistent, even prior to forbearance, COVID or CARES Act forbearance, was that the government the solution was to kick the can down the line. It's not to help fix the cost of education. It's not to ensure that students show an ability to repay. Hey, I get this degree, I can repay $150,000 of student loan. It's, hey, let's make a smaller payment. And if they're working in public service, forgive it after 10 years. If not, forgive it after 20 years. And remember, most politicians are not going to be in office in 10 or 20 years. I get my votes, no one's pissed at me, and it'll be someone else's problem somewhere further down the line. But for me in the loan business, it's rarely a problem. But it may be that the people that reach out to me with large student loans know we have solutions. So there are people out there who are being held out of the housing market because they don't even ask, because they know it's a problem for them and I don't even see them. So anecdotally, my world, it's rarely a problem. I never tell someone, hey, your student loans are too big, you don't qualify. They just go get an IBR payment and we go, okay, maybe you don't qualify for as much as you want, but you still qualify. But what are your thoughts on that one, Jeb?
Honestly, you're in that game more than I am, right? I mean, how much does $413 affect somebody's ability to repay? Like, what is the IBR payment on that? Again, your world is different. You're financing, talking to people, looking at their actual finances. Will it have an impact? Yes, it will have an impact. Does it crash the market? I don't see a world in which it can. Will it affect some? Sure. Will it affect all? No. Just like anything else, right? I mean, a percentage of people will be affected, but $413 for the majority of people that I know isn't going to make or break them. But again, that's the people that I know. Are there some people out there that it will? Possibly. So anyway,
well, here's an example, Jeb. I talked to a borrower a couple hours ago. Husband, wife, or husband and fiance, so soon to be husband, they make about $8,500 a month. If they had $400 of student loans, what is that? 5% adds to their debt to income ratio. So it's an impact. It's a not insignificant impact, but it also doesn't say, oh, you could never possibly buy. It's really going to come down to the rest of the debt load.
No, absolutely. And we got one more chart here to take a look at, Josh, and that is the volatility index versus the Fed funds rate.
So the VIX, Jeb, is generally referred to as the fear-greed index. So generally what you see is when the Fed starts going on these aggressive tightening cycles, the VIX generally goes up. We got like back here in 93, it followed a few years after that. 2004, it followed a year after that. 2014 followed shortly thereafter. We've seen the greatest spike in Fed funds, and the VIX has actually gone down. So it tells us you're hearing people going, what in the world is going on in the stock market? That rates are at all-time high. Economy is, who knows, either going into a recession or just fine. And yet here we sit with stocks at near all-time highs and people not seemingly worried about it. So there's a disconnect there. It just tells us it's something to keep an eye on, because this is not what has historically happened.
No, exactly. And so, but volatility creates issues in the market. Right now, it looks like volatility is down. That said, I mean, the market has been pretty transparent in the direction, in which they want to go. That said, at the moment, you could probably expect another rate hike at the end of the month based on current probabilities out there in the market. As long as the Fed is transparent, with the volatility isn't as crazy. Maybe it happens on the day, the day that they have their announcements, but when they actually do the hike, it's less of an impact, right? Because the market's already built it in. And at this rate, it's already built into the market too. So it's already out there in the stuff that you're looking at. So if we get a Fed funds hike, that doesn't mean interest rates are going to go up that day. It's priced in the market probably a week or two ago when that initial information came out. So that said, Josh, let's transition here and start looking at some questions. There's some on student loans, so I'm just going to touch on them real quick here. Monica says that she was told the other day that they extended the deadline for recertifying IBR or IDR plans until October of 2023. So people's payments should remain the same for another year. Any info there?
No, but I don't doubt that, because what has happened, if you're out of the game, you probably don't care. But if you have student loans, what happens is every year you go back and recertify. And it's sort of like qualifying for a mortgage. You give them all your income documentation, you give them all your expense information, and they look at it and they go, this is what percentage of your disposable income you have to pay us on these student loans, regardless of whether that amortizes the interest or not. So since CARES Act forbearance, they said, well, why would we recertify you? That takes time, effort, and energy and manpower to do that. We'll just push it off another year. We'll push it off another year, push it off another year. It would make sense that they would just say, hey, let's push everyone off another year except that would mean we have a mountain of people that need to complete their recertification within 1 month the following year. I would like to think they'd be smart enough to stagger those out. The important part is, regardless of what happens and regardless of what has happened the last 3 years, you've always been able to go back and request a recertification. They weren't requiring it because there was no payment that you were going to make monthly either way. So I don't know that it makes a huge difference. It definitely makes sense that they would push it off. And Jeb, here's where it's important. I told you about the client earlier that we were successfully able to get her on the California Dream for All. She hasn't recertified in 3 years. During that time, she added about $100,000 of student loan debt, but she also got a degree that increased her income about $55,000 a year. So when it comes time to recert, she was going to have a much higher monthly payment. Well, we were able to get her in on a house, and she's going to have a lower repayment as a homeowner because she has less disposable income than what she would have had otherwise. So really some perverse incentives in the way this is set up. And I don't think that's because our incompetent politicians are devious in trying to do that. They're just dumb, and they don't think through the outcomes of the systems that they're setting up.
No, good stuff. Everyone needs themselves a red apples Kim. I mean, she went to Vegas, sat by the pool, and watched us on Wednesday. Guys, that's what we need. That's what we're looking for here. Dedication. I'm kidding. But no, thanks, Kim, for that. That said, if you are new to the show, first time check, separate from this channel where we dig a deep dive into specific topics in the real estate market. We do things like mortgage underwriting, down payment, deep detail, that sort of thing. This past week, we talked about Airbnb. We've talked about the housing market crash. Next week, we're talking about a forecast. So if you haven't done so already, go over to that channel, subscribe. If you don't like looking at us on video, you can also check us out on audio, on Spotify, Apple, all of those places. That said, I'm a real estate agent here in Southern California. I like helping buyers and sellers, buy property, sell property. That is my full-time job. If you need a real estate agent here locally, reach out to me directly. Would love the opportunity to help. If you need someone across the country, I can refer you to someone there as well. There will be a link going across the bottom here in just a minute. And if you need a lender, Josh is here on the West Coast, covers California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, those states. But if he can't help you, I can refer you to somebody across the country as well using that same link. So do me a favor and check that out. So, and if you're liking this, hit the like button and subscribe. How's that?
Yep. Before we move on, we have to give a shout out to Wesley because he asked for it. He says he puts us on in the background while he wraps up working on Wednesday nights, and he should get a shout out for that. So Wesley, shout out for showing up here with us on the background on Wednesday nights, and tell us, because we see you here every week, what kind of work are you doing while you're listening to the show every week?
Good stuff. Good stuff. Logical Thinker, one of our viewers that's been around a long time, always commenting on the channel here, says, if sellers are locked into their low mortgage rates, who are the type of sellers that have been selling or listing their homes? This is a really good question because I've had this question, not even this question, I've had this conversation with a lot of people recently because I'm a really good example. As an agent here, I would say the primary book of my business is listings, and then working with buyers. This year, obviously it's slower. It's a slower market. But transactions that I have going right now and or going to be coming to the market here soon. One, job relocating to Texas. They relocated here back in 2021. Now they're relocated back out. So that's a sell because they're moving. They don't need the house here anymore. Got another one that just relocated up to Oregon. Got a job at Nike, selling his property here, moving up there. Got a property coming to the market, taking pictures next week. They are her mother passed away. Her and her brother own the property together. They don't want to keep it. They're selling the property, so it's no longer needed. I met with a lady last week. I didn't get the listing on this one. Someone else got it, unfortunately. But that one was an older lady, probably in her late 70s, early 80s, moving out of state. Her family lives in Oregon to be closer to family. Sold one back in North Tustin a couple months ago. Again, older lady, been in the house 57 years, moving to Tennessee to be with family. So what I found, in short here, instead of going through every scenario, is that the people that are moving now or making this transition are people that need to move for one reason or another. In fact, got a client right now looking to sell condo in Long Beach and buy a single family home. He has a child now. He's got a dog, and they're in a small 2-bedroom condo. He wants a house. He wants a yard for the kid, for the dog, to be able to run around. It's people that need to do something that are making that move. It's not the nice to move people. It's the people that really need to make a transition for one reason or another, or just don't have, they don't have that super low rate or care about that super low rate because, they have to make a move one reason or another. So hopefully that's helpful, but good question. We addressed that. Josh, do you think it's inflation messing up the market or low interest rates that people are locked into?
They're really one and the same. Absent the inflation, you would have much lower interest rates. I mean, the reality is most times when people want or need to move, they're going to move. If someone had a 3.25 rate and they could get a 4.5 rate, they're going to stop, they're going to think about it, and they're going to go, okay, we do really need to move. We've got growing kids. My kids are all moved out. I want to be closer to the grandkids. They have a burning need to move, and they go, I don't like the higher rate, but I'll deal with it. We're talking about such an extreme. Like, we looked at the number, when you say most people's loans are in the low threes, even call it 3.5, and we're just a hair over 7% for most people right now, that's a doubling of the interest rate. Most buyers who are impacted by this decision, what you see, Jeb just answered the question of who are these people that are selling, and most of them do not need to buy. Most sellers that want or need to buy are just saying, hey, I will wait for a better entry point where I don't have this giant chasm. So inflation going away or becoming less of an issue would sort of, take care of the issue and clear it up. I don't think you can really separate the two.
And what did you say to me earlier, Josh? You were reading something on Housing Wire or listening to one of their podcasts, and you said something about demand being messed up when rates initially spike. Because was it you that was saying that?
I think it was the Altos guy, the Altos research.
Oh, that's what it was.
Jeb uses. He does a bunch of YouTube videos. They're a little dense. They're probably going to be boring for you to watch, but there's a lot of good info. And he said, here's what happens when rates move up rapidly. Like over the last few weeks, we went from the 6.5-ish range to the 7% range. He says, we have seen pretty consistently a drop in volume of applications and properties going under contract. Once they adjust to that new normal, it kind of goes back to where it is. Now, obviously that can't happen forever. If rates go to 8.5%, I don't know that people are just going to magically adjust to that. But we also said the same thing about 6 and 7%. This time last year, rates were 5%, and we were all sitting here going, holy geez, when are these crazy, terrible high rates going to go away? And now we're all going, when can we get those wonderful 5% rates back? So it is interesting how quickly we and the market adjust when 5% is certainly awful relative to a 3.25, 3.5, but in the grand scheme of things, not that bad at all.
All right, Josh, I have a question for you. Which seems more ridiculous? Me telling you that rates will be less than 6% by the end of 2023, or me telling you that in 1990, Gonzaga basketball will soon be a perennial Final Four contender?
I will actually go with number 2 because I don't think anyone could have foreseen what Gonzaga became. So I went, my first year at Eastern Washington was 93. And I believe Gonzaga had either just made their first NCAA appearance or was just about to. And everyone's like, no, you don't understand. These guys are really good. Gonzaga's maybe 20 minutes from where we are at Eastern. Got to play them both years. And you're like, yeah, they're really good. To think that they could go from that level of being, hey, every year we're going to be in the NCAAs to being a Final Four team. They're a little tiny Catholic school in Spokane, which is a tiny little town in the way far corner of the country on the small side of a semi-populous state. So that was insane. I could make a case for you of how rates could be under 6%. I don't believe it would, but there's there's a non-zero chance of it actually occurring. And if you had asked me, even seeing Gonzaga up close and how good they were, I would have said, no way, no chance that that's a Final Four program.
All right, there you go. Patrick is saying, I don't understand really the first part of this question. So Josh, maybe you can understand it. Will 8% or 9% rates be assumable by the fall market time? Secondly, are some lenders getting out of the housing lending business because of the unaffordable situations happening in real estate? So I'll answer the second part of the question. Are some lenders getting out? Yeah, sure. There's big lenders getting out, and there's also small lenders getting out. Just a natural, change in the market, and you get changes in people making changes, right? It's same for real estate. It's when the business goes down, you got to look around and see if there's enough there to cover you. And for some people, there's not. And some people, it's just not worth the headache to continue doing it. Like when I did loans, for the better part of 10 years in 2012, I was still making money doing lending and real estate, but it was just like, is it worth the headache to continue doing this? And the answer was no. I can still do loans today. I don't want to do loans. Like no desire. It's not worth the headache. I look at Josh and think
he's
Josh would
mean.
look so
he comes
much
into my
younger.
office. Yeah,
He would look
he comes
so
into my
much
office and makes
younger
fun
if
of
he
me
didn't do
every
loans.
day.
He would look like me, but he doesn't. It's just, it's what happens. Sorry, Josh. But do you understand? Will the 8 or 9% rates be assumable? I mean, I think assumable. I think
I think
loans.
he's saying, can we assume that rates will be 8 or 9% by the fall? And I would say absolutely not.
No,
Absolutely
no
not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. Okay, let's see. We're going to go with a softball question here. What's it like to live in North Carolina all 4 seasons? Is it worth it? No, it's not. That's why I don't live there. If it was worth it, I would be there. It's awesome. Great place to live. Great place to grow up. But there's 4 seasons, and it's hot as hell there right now. It's probably 110 degrees and humid. Rains. It's like Florida. It's you get out everything. But Florida doesn't get the winters. You still get the winters there. So it's a great place to live. But all the things I've talked about in moving out of state, out of California, are just for me at this time in my life, not worth it. So I stay here. Even though there's things I don't like, things I don't agree with. I focus on Jeb, my family, and all is good, right? I can only control Jeb. And I can't even do that half the time. I can't even control me half the time.
80% of the time.
80%. That's a stretch. Josh, let's see here.
Hold on. Anya just came in saying that in California, people are used to small homes. 1,700 square feet is normal. You crazy people in the rest of the country who talk about small homes being 15, 16, 1,700 square feet, that's insane. I grew up in like a 900 square foot house.
Oh, yeah. So did I. Mine was like 8 something.
Yeah, 1,700. My house is spacious. We have rooms in my 1,750 square foot house that we don't go into, that we do not use.
Yeah, no. And I grew up in North Carolina on land, and our house was only like 800 square feet. But that's, just where we were financially at that time. So nevertheless, here, let's see. There's a lot of what if questions like, hey, if this happened, could this happen? Those are two. I don't know. Do we want to go that direction here? What other questions do we have, Josh? Anything good?
Here, we kind of addressed this earlier today. So you already have the answer in your head for this one. So Monica comes back and says, is the typical after 4th of July inventory influx still expected this year with these rates? So what is typical? What would we normally expect? You might even want to pull that chart back up and kind of show what it's been the last few years, but what is typical and what are you expecting this year?
Yeah, like I don't think of 4th of July as being a holiday. Like after that, you get an influx. Like for example, I think of Super Bowl. Super Bowl is typically after Super Bowl, you start seeing inventory increase for the spring market. I've never looked at July 4th as a date that, hey, after this, you're going to see that same increase. What I think happens now is probably see much of what you've seen over the last couple of weeks. Just, we saw 5,000 homes come to the market this past week. I think that's somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 homes is what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. I think that's probably going to be the norm until you get to mid-August, at which point I think it probably starts to slow even more. And that's your peak of inventory for the year is sometime in mid to late August. Just my thoughts, but hard to say. I think rates are keeping people in. Affordability is keeping people in. Just it's not a great time to list or buy, really. I mean, to be completely honest.
Those two things, Jeb, rates and affordability, because what I can tell you is the majority of people that I'm talking to from the show right now, or from online, I should say, are outside of California. I do talk to Californians every day, but the numbers are difficult. We had a comment here. I think it was Platinum Black, just said signed a lease, got priced out of the market. So for the time being, there are a lot of people. We sit here. Should you buy or should you rent? Well, we have less people who have the choice. more people are being forced into renting, especially in the high cost areas. You can suck it up in another market where you can buy a $350,000 home and say, hey, it's more than I want to pay, but I'll refinance at some point in the future and it'll get reasonable and it'll take care of itself over the next 3, 4, 5 years with wage increases. A lot of the people in California, they don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, the title of this video is "The Housing Market Will Continue to Slow into 2023." I think we're in for a slower market, but because demand and supply are both kind of moving together, right? Demand is going to go down because housing affordability is going to be a problem, going to continue to be a problem. It's not like it's a new problem; it's a problem. Inventory is also going down, so they're kind of moving step by step. They're in sync to some extent. It's not exactly the same, but there's not a big enough difference to see a big change in the market. The people that need to do something will do something. I mean, a really good example, I've got a house here on the market in Huntington Beach, been on the market for just over 90 days, 3 months. Average market time here in Huntington Beach is somewhere in the 35 to 45 day range. I haven't looked at it specifically in the last week or two. So we're somewhere in that range. So we started the listing the property. It was listed at $1,475,000. My suggestion to start was $1,425,000. That's where I thought we should list it. We listed $1,475,000, so higher than I expected. We reduced the price down to $1,050,000. We've been on the market, and this was a couple of weeks ago, probably a month ago now that we reduced the price, maybe even 6 weeks ago. This past weekend, we got 2 offers. So now, and both are over $1,400,000. So now we're basically close to where I thought we should list the property to start with. And all of a sudden there's multiple bids. What's the change? It's just unique properties. This property backs to a street. It's not for everyone. It takes a special buyers to want to buy certain types of properties. This is one of them. Now there's demand in the market. There's still people out there looking to do things. And if you're in a market, right, our median home price here in Orange County or in Huntington Beach is probably $1,250,000-ish, right? If you're somewhere around that median price, probably still going to be competitive. Whereas if you're way above it, like the luxury market, $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 million homes, those are going to sit a little bit longer. You're going to see a little bit more inventory. But even that said, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who's a big luxury agent here in Orange County, been selling real estate for 25 years. And he's like, I've got buyers that want to buy these things. A lot of the problem is the sellers are looking for a property out there in the market and they can't find anything, like, because there's just not a lot of inventory out there. And these buyers are specific in what they're looking for. So just different segments of the market. Real estate's local. Pay attention to that stuff, guys. It all means something. Find somebody that understands your market and you put yourself in a better position to find the right property when the time presents itself. All right, Josh, where are we? Kind of got sidetracked.
We are all over the place. Let's kind of go back to this one because I think this is important. I think it's a big misunderstanding. Yep. So VAR Watch says a friend of mine just bought an $800,000 house in late 2022 after years of renting. He's super worried about student loans restarting because their student loan is around low 400,000s. First off, that's not crazy. I see that fairly regularly. But as crazy as that sounds to everyone.
What's crazy to me, Josh, in reading that is who didn't think they were going to restart?
Yeah. No, but
what are we talking about here?
Exactly. So let's answer your question. What are we talking about here? The lender didn't pretend like that debt didn't exist and that there wasn't a payment on it. I can almost guarantee you there was an IBR payment. The IBR payment was documented and it was used to qualify. Otherwise, your best case scenario on a $400,000 loan is Fannie Mae guidelines will allow you to use 0.5%. So $2,000 monthly payment on that, most people do not qualify. But what I can tell you, if they went that route and used the $2,000, when they restart, their payments on the $400,000 will be less than that. And most likely it's going to be an IBR payment significantly less than that. If they were qualified off of the IBR payment, much like we talked about earlier, and Monica chimed in and said, absolutely, I'm trying to buy before mine gets reset so I have less disposable income. They're going to have less disposable income. So when they go back and recertify, it's going to be less than it was previously. So they may not like it. It may be uncomfortable for them to magically have to start making this payment again, but the lender accounted for it and knows that they can make their payment with the repayment starting on the student loan. And that's the same for every borrower out there who's qualified. We didn't just, in the mortgage industry, we didn't just act like those student loans didn't exist for the last 3 years.
I'm trying to read through all of Willing's comments and find some that are somewhat usable here on the show. This one is one we can use. How do I handle a recent name change? Driver's license is updated, but when pulling credit, all mortgages weren't included. What do you do in this case? Why? And also why? What do you do when there's difference in names and things aren't reporting? Josh, from your side.
As far as the credit report, they should report because they're going to be pulling back. You can't change your social security number. That one's going to stick with you. So in terms of things on your credit report, that should pull back through. We do have people all the time. Marriage is the obvious most common one. Different things happen. People change their names. I have had people literally just felt like it. They wanted to be someone different. They changed their name. And you ask them, why does this show a completely different name show in your AKAs in your credit report? And they go, I've changed my name. Why? I felt like it. Wanted to be a new person. So it doesn't really matter. We have to document who you are now, match that up on your credit report. It has to reflect your name. We have to be able to tie it to your social. So if it was very recent, sounds like you're having a hard time tying it to that social, which is crazy. Because they should be able to go to each of the bureaus. I have not had this specific issue with one happening that recent that we can't tie mortgages together because they usually get pulled back in with that social.
Ariel says he has 2 kids cooking Trader Joe muffins right now in the kitchen, a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old, in a 2,050 square foot house, and it seems way too small. How do I manage? So those of you guys listening to the show, my house is about 1,800 square feet. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I've got 3 boys. So between my wife and I, there's a lot running around, 11, 9, and a 5-year-old. It will tell you, they play outside a lot. They're active kids. We're in sports a lot. I mean, I would say outside of summer, 6 nights a week, 5 to 6 nights a week, we're at some sort of sporting event. So just, you got to be out and about. My kids, I told my wife several times, if we had a 500 square foot house or a 5,000 square foot house, we'd all be in the same room. Like her and I can't hide. We go upstairs and watch the TV. They come upstairs. We go downstairs. They come downstairs. We go outside. It's wherever we go, they go. But it's all good, right? I mean, I've read things recently where it's like, my oldest is 11, so he'll be 18, 7 years. So you got 7 more years. And when you start to look at it like that, you're like, 7 years, it's not a lot of time. It'll be a long time at the same time, but it's one of those things that it'll be gone before you know it. And we'll be sitting there wondering what happened. So just try to focus on what we can and make the best of it. And there will be an opportunity, right? This is not our forever home. I know that for a fact. And we'll change when the opportunity presents itself. But always looking.
You don't have the golden handcuffs?
She looks more than I do. What's that?
You don't have the golden handcuffs, Jeb? You're not permanently trapped in that home?
Well, I think golden handcuffs. I think you're giving me some sort of bailout package from like Goldman Sachs, like the golden parachute.
That's a golden parachute.
I'd rather have that than the handcuffs.
Yeah.
Although golden handcuffs, you can use those for other things. I just don't know.
I'll talk to your wife about that.
All right. Ile. If a builder offered a rate buy down and you, the buyer, ask for time to think, then in less than 48 hours, builder said no buy down plus increased price, would that be a reason to walk away? It depends. Depends on where you are in your negotiation, right? Is there a line in the sand? I think you got to go to each negotiation kind of knowing where you're willing to go and what you're not willing to do. Is that them playing hardball, or is that them just seeing where you are as a buyer because you didn't jump on their initial negotiation, right? I mean, I would say unless they have a backup, they're probably willing to work with you. In some cases, they might not be, right? Josh has talked in the past about how some of these builders have, almost pre-bought some of these rates down initially, and maybe they don't have the option to that anymore, and therefore the rate's higher now. It's hard to say. Josh,
there's been a couple of really good articles on this with some of the big national builders. It's different for smaller regional or local builders. They maybe don't have the purchasing power, maybe don't have the margins, maybe they're even better. But I think the big players have managed this very, very well. They had approached 30% margins at the peak of the pandemic. That's monstrous when some of these houses are selling for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 to have a 30% margin on that. They've normalized now in the low 20s, 21, 22%. And that is with allocating 4 to 6% towards concessions, whether that's upgrades, whether it's lower interest rates. Here's my part that I have a hard time with it. If you absolutely have to have that interest rate to buy, okay, I get it, because it's big. In some cases, Jeb, we're seeing, they're a percent below the market if they bought a forward commitment and they're willing to eat the cost of that. But it's a sunk cost. If we're right that sometime in the next 12, 24, 36 months, rates are back at 5.25, you're 5.625, you're still going to refinance out of it, and you didn't get the benefit of that. If you could negotiate a lower price, or if you could negotiate the upgrades being included at a lower price or covering your closing costs, I think that's the better play. But a lot of the people that I'm talking to, people here in Southern California are just saying, well, I can't afford at those rates, but I can afford at those rates. And so they're getting pushed into homes. So the builders are playing this game very, very well. And the market is kind of played into their hands because they have that ability. But just think about it, because it is a sunk cost that you're not going to get back, whereas upgrades and closing costs will be with you permanently.
There you go. That's good analysis. That's what you have to think about if you're considering doing, buy downs in your rates, getting seller credits, all of those things. All of this stuff matters. That's why it's, makes really sexy headlines, some of these, the way things are put out there in the market. But you need to consider both sides, because at the end of the day, it may be a non-issue if and when rates come down and getting back in the market. So let's just see. Josh.
Jeb, last week we got the question of where we would live if money were no object. Darren made something pop up in my brain. I live in a 1,250 square foot ranch house, and it's still alone in a 1,250 square foot ranch, and it still seems small, probably because my neighborhood is full of old Victorian 3-story, 3,000 square foot houses. My wife and I and our little dog, if we had our way, we would have about a 1,500 max square foot house with like a 3,000 square foot garage attached to it. So that's where I want to go. I just want the garage space so we can do all of the stuff where I can start, Jeb, my new golf cart YouTube channel of renovating golf carts in my 3,000 square foot garage.
Josh is the most ambitious person with creating ideas. That's just creating them. We need Josh to act on his ideas, guys.
When you see my sweet
Josh
golf
to
cart
act on his ideas,
you're going to be
let
mad.
me know in the comments below. Josh is ambitious, but to follow through. Calling you out, Josh. Calling you out right now, bro.
You're going to be mad when my golf cart channel is the biggest in South Carolina.
Oh, and that's where you're moving?
No, that's the demographic is in the South. They love their golf carts.
All right, well, that's fair. Okay, let's see. We got some thanks from Monica for answering a question last week, saying we're the best. Doesn't really, just. I like the fact that she said we're the best. So I wanted to put that up there. Patrick is asking, what are thoughts on eliminating real estate tax for all homeowners? I understand it would essentially affect city, school, and police funding, but it could help work somehow. No, it could not work anyway. There's no world in which they would eliminate property taxes entirely, and that could work. So we can't even, there's no conversation here. That's just couldn't work.
Yeah, the money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
there's very few states running giant surpluses right now where they could just take away a large portion of their
that's our entire city's budget, basically. Yeah, if you take that away, what happens? We go under quickly. Josh,
I've got lots of people in favor of my large garage and my golf cart business, Jeb. Everyone's in favor of it.
I'm reading comments. I'm not getting anything here that's standing out to me. Does that mean the show's over?
Everyone enjoyed their 4th of July is what that means, Jeb.
That's great. I'm glad you guys did. That's it's perfect. So what I will say is that if you've enjoyed anything on tonight's episode, in fact, if you haven't enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up. It helps us. It helps the YouTube algorithm, helps push us out to more people, helps me accomplish my goal of educating home buyers, sellers, investors, helps me get a silver play button for my kids. They want it. And that's where it's going to hang, in the bedroom somewhere, right? Give it to them. Let them do something with it. Look out for golf cart crash creators trying to talk you out of your
Yeah,
dreams, Josh.
that's a good warning. There's definitely, I'm
That's
sure
great.
that
Side
market's
note
about to
there.
collapse.
I
Recession's
read
coming.
that and could not read it as I read it. But that said, hit the like, subscribe, check us out on the Educated Homebuyer YouTube channel. Check out the podcast. You need a real estate agent, reach out. Need a mortgage person, reach out to Josh. Josh, what else do we have here? It's really looking bleak here. We got a lot of people saying their markets are still competitive. We had one earlier saying Maryland is still competitive. We've got Muhammad here saying Iowa City is still very competitive. I think the idea is that when people say slow down or that the market is shifting, that they automatically assume that, for example, that I'm saying that prices are down, that it's no longer competitive. It's not that at all. That it's what I mean by slow down is just there's just going to be less activity in the market. I mean, there's less activity right now. I think year to date I've closed 7, 8 transactions. And this time, normally, like by July in a normal year, I would have closed probably 17, 15, 17 transactions. So less activity in the market. It's going to continue to slow down throughout the rest of the year, in my opinion, because I don't think you're going to see a big change in rates. I think if anything, rates move a little bit here and there. Yes, they're going to move down, but is it going to be enough to get people off the fence this year? I don't know. I don't think so. Josh? Anything?
No, it would take a big move. Like when we're looking here, the market is what moves interest rates. The Fed is reacting to the data that they're seeing. And we've been critical. We've said bad things about the Fed here, but if you look at the data, nothing is forcing them off of their position. And the thing that is out there, we're seeing wages moderate. Wages adjusted for inflation have not kept pace, but they're looking at just wage growth and low unemployment. And barring something unforeseen, they will keep hiking and they will break something. And when the market reacts, they're going to react not probably as violently as it did when they said, hey, the Fed is breaking something to the wrong way. They've overstimulated. When they say they've overly depressed the economy, it's going to react in the other direction. We don't know what that looks like, but it will lead to lower interest rates and it will be supportive to the housing market for the reason that we don't have the recipe for mass supply coming into the market. So if we had 10, 12% unemployment and wage growth or wage losses year over year, where people are decreasing incomes, you could see that happen. But look at the charts. We don't have a recipe for it. We're saying, how do we get to 5 to 6% unemployment where the Fed would have a comfort level and maybe back down to 2 to 3% wage growth versus.
He is, Josh, freezing.
Yeah.
Crappy internet connection over there.
Yeah.
So Josh, we're going to end this episode a little bit differently. So earlier in the episode, we talked about things that are happening tomorrow with regards to data, right? Data being released. We also talked about how bad data is good for the market, typically drives rates lower. Good data is it creates these big moves in markets is because it's not necessarily forecasted. I mean, there's a forecast, but like when the Fed says, hey, we're doing this and there's a high probability, you kind of know they're doing that. With regards to job numbers, nobody knows at the moment because the estimates have been all over the place. But tomorrow we get ISM manufacturing, we get jobless claims data, initial jobless claims data, we get ADP report, we get something else, Josh, tomorrow. Something else tomorrow.
Those were the big ones.
Those are the big ones. And we get not PCE. We get the non-farm payrolls on Friday. So what's your prediction? Is the data in line? Does it disappoint? Does it beat expectations? And are we higher next week with rates or lower? Ooh, look at this. He's thinking.
No, I think it's if I were to guess, because the market expectations are so low, there's not really a recipe. I mean, it would be shocking if the numbers were. I think they're expecting like 220 or 240,000 new jobs. Like that's the one that worries me. I just don't see generally we're looking for a beat or a failure to meet market expectations. The market expectations are so low, and we're already, unless we are just the market is just set up defensively for the worst case scenario the next couple of days and gets worst case scenario, but already expected it and improves off of that, we're going to be worse next week. So I think the next number, Jeb, is like 399 on the 10-year, and then we got 409 above that. It looks like the market's going to move that direction.
All right, guys, that's where we're going to end today's show. So next Wednesday, we'll be back, see if Josh's forecast is accurate or not. Hopefully he's wrong. Hopefully he is absolutely wrong. Data beat expectations on a good front or bad front, rather, however you want to look at it. And
Vulture.
And rates improved. And, we're all smiles and giggling. We want to giggle. We want to giggle on the show. Something we haven't done. We want to giggle here. But nevertheless, guys, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check out the Educated Homebuyer podcast. Reach out to me if you need me. Reach out to Josh if you need him. There is a link scrolling right there if you need someone else across the country. We're happy to help you. But Josh, final words. You send us out.
Yeah, we've covered it all. There's not a whole lot left to say other than, Jeb, I feel I can't say adios. It's your word. So you have to lead us off.
No, so adios. You have to go amigos, and then I'll go adios.
Amigos. All right, amigos.
Adios. See that works.
There we go.